Hi, Matt. I'm so excited to be here today. I know that we just got back from ETH Denver, and I'm excited to have this conversation. A little bit of a recap, a little bit of, you know, what is Flow, what has the Flow team been up to, and also just to get like a, I don't know, maybe some alpha. What do you think?
Oh, okay. Jumping right to the alpha. But no, it was great to meet Denver as well. I know we've seen each other on the timeline for some time, but that's kind of like the magic of these events is we all get to kind of get together and hang out and learn a lot from each other. So it was great to meet and excited to chat today.
No, absolutely. It was my pleasure. And, for those that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what is exactly your role? I know I got a lot of questions after I had the opportunity to team up and partner with your team and, put out a lot of content in the timeline. I got a lot of DMs saying, like, wait, who can I talk to from that team? What are they building? What are they doing? And now I'm like, okay, now I get to properly introduce you for those that
Nice.
perhaps they don't know exactly what do you do. I know you play a lot of roles and have a lot of hats, but if you could walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's been a really cool experience. I've been with Flow for a little under a year now. I think a year in April. But yeah, a lot of people are surprised, like, oh wow, like Flow's doing this really cool stuff and they're building this. Like I had no idea. So it's cool that you're having a similar experience and getting a lot of people hitting you up. But yeah, my name is Matt. I go by Doodlifts on all platforms, and so I work in kind of growth and community at Flow, and so. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of stuff, help manage the socials. If there's any apps in our ecosystem that are building, I try to help them be successful to the best of my ability through whether that's helping them with their kind of go-to-market strategy, helping them with socials, giving them a vibe check, whatever is helpful. Like, I look at my job as like how to help Flow, the community, and our kind of apps, which are included in our community, to be fair, just to win, and so. Yeah, that's what gets me up in the morning and what I try to do every day.
I love that. I think it's such an exciting role where you get to help people at the end of the day, and I feel like that's something that I could relate to you, where it's not only about the technology, about the solutions, but also about the people that are being, in the space, whatever role it is. It's something where how could we be of service and then, make them feel more comfortable. And when you describe your role to me the first time, I was like, oh, I get that. I was like, I like that. I was like, what a wonderful way to wake up and say, hey, my job is also to be of service to this group, right? And push the boundaries a little bit more and utilizing a technology that we all are degens about and excited and loving it day in day out. But
I love it. You stole the words right out of my mouth as far as like being of service goes. That's been a big principle of mine for many years. And so what's funny is I had not thought about it in the context of this role. So thank you for reminding me.
oh, that's sweet. I love it. You know what? Many times, we go about our day to day, and we don't realize that what we're doing it is a service, and we could be of service in wearing so many different hats that they don't necessarily have to look like. It's not only when we go and we volunteer with a nonprofit, right? It's not only when we go and we, donate cash. It's in our day to day, and I think that that's what makes like the bigger impact. And this is why many times like more than just the protocols that are working on something exciting is also like what team is building around that ethos, right? Not only, oh, how cool that you have this great technology, but it's like what does it feel like? And to me it was really intimidating, but I love being out of my comfort zone. When we first chatted and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to in Denver, let's do this, let's create some content, let's get to know the team. But only knowing each other online many times, that could be a what if, right? Are the vibes going to be right? What is that going to feel? And I'll say a little bit about my experience just going to the Flow Castle, being like you weren't even there, so I just like walked in. There was a workshop happening, and I decided to. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make the best of it. I hope I could participate because from our conversations, you're like, it's open to everyone. I was like, I'm everyone, so let me
Yeah.
participate. Ended up participating. It just everything just felt very comfortable and inviting. I give my ideas. I was like, I don't know if this is a smart idea or a silly idea, but let's roll with it. Got to meet a lot of people, and at the end, in that mingling, someone came up to me. They're like, "Oh, we really loved your ideas. Thank you for coming and being so engaged." And it happened to be someone from the team, and then I was like, "Oh, how funny!" Like uh, I'm actually here with you guys.
Yeah.
And to me, that genuine
Love that.
connection. I was like, I couldn't have planned this even if I wanted to. But how sweet that it just clicked, right? And I felt very much like that where a lot of people from the team, I think, from the few people that I met, I believe I met like five from the team, like on a more like personal level. I think that it's cool to see that vision of everyone wanting to make it better, to be of service, and to work with the rest of the people that are trying to build and making it accessible. So I'll take it back to the very beginning if we could talk about that, because many people
Yeah.
don't know about, like why did Flow started, but they probably know about CryptoKitties, right? So I think that that is a beautiful way to get started
Yeah.
in this I don't know, let's call it a walk down the timeline of Flow.
Walk down memory lane. Yeah.
There
Like
you
walk
go.
down the blockchain, you know?
Yes, the
And
timeline.
and
I've been
that
in
that's
Twitter too long.
that's how a lot of my conversations actually started at ETH Denver. You know, they're like, I'm like, oh, have you heard of Flow? And they're like, not sure. And I'm like, have you heard of CryptoKitties? Top Shot? Like, yes. Like, I'm like, okay, great, let's chat. Like, but yeah, so yeah, the story of Flow is really interesting, and with being with Flow for a little bit, for almost a year now, it's been really fun to kind of learn the lore behind Flow.
Mhm.
It's fascinating. If you've been around NFT Twitter for a while, like the it's and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but like you watch the lore thread of Flow, it weaves its way through literally everything
Mhm.
in Web3 that I know at least, which is fascinating. And crypto, so it all started with CryptoKitties, right? There's a company called Dapper Labs, and they made this like on-chain generative art game where you could breed cats on chain. So you'd have, two kitties and they'd have different DNA like in their metadata, and you'd breed them and they'd make a new cat. And it was just this fun on-chain game. And then I think at its peak, about like 17,000 people were using it, breeding cats, which isn't a ton of people, like if you think about it. But even
Mhm.
that amount of people took up about, I think it was like 70% of the traffic on Ethereum at the time, which is crazy. Like, which basically like brought Ethereum to its knees. Like gas prices were like incomprehensibly high. There was like ICOs. It was like ICO era. They were having to like move their launch. Like we can't launch. And it's funny. It's like if anyone was around for the ordinals thing during, early ordinals on Bitcoin, and all the Bitcoiners were like, they're spamming our network with these pictures. Like similar response to CryptoKitties, right? They're like these NFTs, like we can't do tokens, like because these NFTs. Um, and so yeah, that's it clogged the network, and so the Dapper Labs team. This is some of the lore that I learned. They go back to their community and say, "We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out how to stay on ETH, how to have this game. You all clearly love it. We're going to figure it out." And they spent, I think it was like 9 months and like millions of dollars trying to figure out how to stay on ETH mainnet, and ultimately came to the conclusion they couldn't. Even after going to their community, like, we're not leaving ETH, we're not doing it. Like, they're like, we just can't. If we want to kind of stake our business and stake our reputation on this product and continue to build more consumer products, we need a better platform. And so the stories that I've heard is they've read hundreds of white papers. And one of the hardest lines that I've ever heard was from co-founder Flo, Deet Shirley. He said, after our small crew had read hundreds of white papers, we're all huddled in this boardroom. He's like, and at that point in history, we may have been the five most like educated people on the planet on like distributed computing and decentralized systems. And they decided, this is how they want to launch Flow blockchain. And I was like, that's crazy. If you really think about it, like, I don't know. So
100%.
yeah, so CryptoKitties crashes Ethereum, and yeah, and they had to build something new, and so that's how Flow got started.
And to think that, you know, like that, like finding a solution, right? And I feel that many times in our ecosystem, it's like, okay, we're creating new things or something else is dropping, and it's like, what is it solving? And that is an amazing start place, right? Like we're actually solving a major problem. This is not working. No one's happy with this. This is not sustainable. What can we fix? And then, from that point on, I think a lot of other people that didn't get onboarded into the space through CryptoKitties, everyone knows like Top Shop, right?
Yeah,
So, and I
yeah,
think
yeah.
then yet again, if for some reason someone is like, no, I wasn't around when CryptoKitties, I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure, they will for sure did not know about the origins of like Top Shot. So how does that, once they build this, how does that partnership even start? Because that is major, right? This is, I feel like not, if right now we're still a small community, right? And I'll say that in quotations.
Quotations, yeah.
I think that back then, for something as big as the NBA to pay attention and to say, "Hey, we want to be on chain," what does that look like? And how did they have like what vision did they have around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm like, and I don't want to do it the disservice of being like, this is exactly how it happened because I wasn't there, you know.
Sure.
But I think that Dapper Labs, from what I've heard, so
Mhm.
like Dapper Labs, started CryptoKitties. Then they're like, hey, we have to, build this blockchain if we really want to scale, right? Because, like you said, the problem was is it wasn't scaling, and you couldn't actually build real consumer apps to like have any hopes of onboarding the actual world on chain, right? And so they built Flow blockchain, and one of the first products on it was Top Shot. Now, and I'm not sure like who reached out to who, how that transpired, but I give NBA credit for being visionary enough to even think about being on chain, right? Like that's crazy. I heard recently it was at ETH Denver. Roham, one of the co-founders of Dapper Labs, was on stage, and he was saying something to the effect of how the NBA actually really was into the fact that they didn't have to maintain these like assets, like the storage fees and the server fees, because they could publish them and they could maintain the front end and the ecosystem and the community, but they don't have to be paying like the AWS bill, and that could go on as long as the network is live. And I was like, oh, that's actually relatively interesting, like kind of a concept. And I didn't think that way, but I just saw a video the other day. My wife Emily Rose is really into Tamagotchi. Trust me, I'm making a point here. And someone was doing a video review on Tamagotchi, and they have these new Tamagotchis. You can put these chips in there and like download different like skins and stuff because of course you can. It's actually called the Tamaverse, the Tamagotchi metaverse. And this person in the video was like, make sure you plug in your Tamagotchi chip and you download the right one, because when Tamagotchi stops maintaining the servers in 4 or 5 years, you got to make sure that you have the right one plugged in because they won't update them anymore. And I'm like, oh, like collectors are already thinking this way. Like, yeah, when the Web2 company inevitably rugs our product, like we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And so I think that's really cool. The NBA was visionary enough to say like, oh, we actually want these things to mirror our physical collectibles that are out there on paper that people have in shoeboxes and basements and get discovered 30 years later. Like we want these to exist for a really long time, and on chain was a really good answer for that. So, like I said, sorry about the tangent, but the thesis was proved relatively quickly in the sense that Top Shot, at some of its early height, was processing as many transactions just on that app as the entire Ethereum blockchain. So it's like the scaling problem like was clearly demonstrated right there, which I think is so cool. And I think it's cool the NBA is still here 4 years later.
Yeah.
That's
And
crazy, and we can talk more about that later. But it's crazy.
absolutely. I think that the fact that they're still in it says a lot about it, and just little things that maybe you and I didn't even think of, because now that you mentioned this example, I didn't think of that either. But it makes sense because if you're the one in charge of numbers, if you're the one that then has to go back and say, hey, in order to maintain this 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, this is the bill that we're gonna get. These are not collectibles. These are things that like this is an investment. Even though we're, the community is collecting it, then there is still a price tag for us. And it's just not suitable. And it might not be as appealing for a Web2 company, right? And business, because it's not sustainable over time. And eventually, what you said, they're going to unplug the core and say, like, sorry, it was cute while it
Yeah,
lasted, but that's it.
yeah.
And the whole,
It's crazy. If a company wants to put out digital assets and they have to like grow their digital asset ecosystem, every drop they do, everything increases their cost
Yeah,
forever if they want to maintain it, right? Like so, in that doesn't seem like a very good business model. As opposed to like doing mints on chain, it's like they can focus on all the front end stuff, and then once they're out there, those collectibles just exist and they don't accrue additional cost maintaining them, if that makes sense.
absolutely. And this is one of the partnerships that is not only, huge. I was like, how many transactions, how many people were onboarded through this, how many people still have them and they're still active, and but there's so much more. And I think that, this is a good transition into what are some of those current partnerships and brand relations that you have worked with or the team has worked with, and why are they important? I do believe that when we see these names, they get our attention, or people start, they're like more intrigued now. They're like, oh, wait, what? Oh, you guys are working with them? How? How did you land this? Right? And not only how did you land this, but like, how did you maintain it? And what was the goal? Because I do believe that there is a specific goal into partnering with such big names.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, there's a lot we could talk about there as far as like what's currently going on. Some of the other partners, I think about like Ticketmaster just is about to mint. If it hasn't happened already, it's going to happen soon. Like mint their 100 millionth NFT on Flow. They put out commemorative tickets for anybody who attends a concert. You get an email that says, "Here's your, commemorative digital collectible." I saw one on the timeline the other day. Someone posted they got a Chris Stapleton concert ticket, and they tweeted about it. I was like, "Oh, it just looks so cool."
It's amazing.
It has like your seat, and I mean, it's just so cool. And another great example, Ticketmaster can mint 100 million NFTs, and they don't have an AWS bill for 100 million NFTs. Um, but yeah, I mean, some of our more, well, I guess thinking about the big brands, and I think this is an important distinction to make. It's like at this point in the journey, so like uh, the Flow blockchain was built by Dapper Labs to solve their scaling problem, insecurity, the kind of the blockchain trilemma. Um, but at some point, and I don't know exactly how the decision was made or why, in the sense of the exact kind of minutia, but
Mhm.
Dapper Labs spun off the Flow Foundation to manage the protocol, right? So now Dapper Labs can do what it does best, which is make consumer dApps
Okay.
instead of being like managing the protocol. So now the Flow blockchain is managed by the Flow Foundation, and it's an important distinction because when we talk about like, oh, these brands made partnerships with Flow, like a lot of them have either built on Flow or they're like Dapper Labs as maybe licensed the NBA IP and done stuff like that. And so I think this is a cool distinction in the way that companies can work with a company like, or sorry, like more like legacy IPs or traditional IPs can work with a company like Dapper Labs to really craft their kind of on-chain product ecosystem, all this stuff like NBA Top Shot, like Disney Pinnacle, all this stuff. Like Dapper Labs has this full product studio, right, where they can put out these full apps, which is really, really cool. And then we at the Flow Foundation, you talked about being of service. Like I think about the apps on Flow, a lot of, some of the major ones built by Dapper Labs, but there's many others. And we could talk about what it's been like since our recent upgrade in September. But our job, at the Flow Foundation is not to be responsible for app success, but I think about it's to be responsible to the apps. So like we're responsible to them to bring, our best abilities, whether that's uptime for the blockchain, whether that's go to market help, things like this, like the stuff that I was talking about. And we're just responsible to them to provide the best platform so that they can have the best chance at success for their applications. Um, that just so happens to have like we have some of the world's biggest brands building on Flow, which is awesome. Disney, NBA, NFL, Ticketmaster, Mattel, Barbie, UFC. I mean, the list goes on. I'm probably actually forgetting something, which is a crazy thing to say with that list of big brands. But yeah, we're just really grateful to be able to provide this like incredible platform for these brands to have the success that they've had. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. And I think that, just to make sure that I understand fully, so you guys work with Dapper Labs, but then there's also other companies that could come directly to Flow because they're two different things. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, so a company could come to the Flow Foundation, uh, but at the same time, it's like we don't build apps. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, so
we
if they
can
need
show
assistance
you.
building the app, it would go Dapper Labs, and then once that's all set up, then it would go to the Flow Foundation, correct?
Yes
No.
and no. It's like so. I appreciate your curiosity in asking these
Yeah.
questions. It's good questions to ask, right? Like, um, the thing is like Flow is a permissionless blockchain, so anybody can deploy an app on Flow. So if you find a developer, like you can deploy an app. You don't need Dapper Labs. You don't need Flow blockchain. Like you could
Okay.
just do it.
Hmm.
If you want to work with Dapper Labs, and create a similar product to some of their like headline apps that they've built, then I would certainly hit them up for sure. But if you have your own dev studio, if you have your own developers, front end, whatever, then it's like have at it, build an app, and we certainly want to support you in doing so. But you don't need our permission. You can just build stuff.
Do it. Okay. So then what would be some of the perks if I am thinking of building something and I'm like, okay, should I build it on Flow? What are some of the perks? Because maybe I do have some of these things, maybe I don't, or maybe just overwhelmed with so many different options. There's so many different change, and I think that sometimes that could get daunting, or people don't even know like what is it that sets you guys apart. I get the story, I get the lore, all that. I see some of the benefits. I see that some of the biggest brands are building on Flow, but I'm not one of the biggest brands, so should I build on Flow, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
what support do I have, and what is yeah. I think that just to get an idea of that will be helpful.
No, it's a really good question, and I mean, it hints at the kind of broader question of why do I build anywhere on chain? To be fair, because like you said, it could be super overwhelming.
And
Uh,
sometimes not everything has to be on chain. I was like, sometimes people want to build things, and I'm like, oh, I get it, but like maybe something else could be on chain.
yeah, is it made better by being on chain, or are you just doing it for the sake of it? I don't know. That's
Just to
that's a
say that
whole
it
other
does something on chain.
conversation.
But
That's a whole other conversation. Now, I would say that you could do more on chain with Flow, that may lend itself to some of those ideas that may be untenable in other places. Like there was a great video a while ago. It was a joke, but it was like this first person shooter game, and for each time he shot a bullet, he had to click a transaction, and it was really funny. It was like the most silly example, but um, yeah, the question why build on Flow, right? And I think I don't know. I think starting with the big brands is relatively interesting because you said to yourself, like, I'm not a big brand.
mhm.
I do think there is something to be said for like I'm building on the same network as these big brands. Like that has value. We have a Flow community reward store where we like surface trending apps and things like that. And so that's one of the things that we like to tell our builders about because we actually, as the foundation, as the people who manage the protocol, want to help reward your users. But at the same time, like you appear in the same reward store that Disney, NBA, NFL, all these people, which is kind of cool. So it's like you can take that around to your friends, your family, be like, oh, there's my app in the reward store right next to the world's biggest brands. That's pretty cool. Um, but from a more like technical perspective, I think the takeaway is like you can truly, and I know, we're not like other blockchains. I know every blockchain says this, but you can actually truly build things on Flow that you cannot build anywhere else. And I won't belabor you with the details, like because one, I'm the community guy. I'm also not super technical, but um, but I mean there is a lot of like depth there. But at the end of the day, it's like there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting that are happening on Flow right now. Is like we did just debut EVM equivalency in September, which a lot of people don't know about, and that's why a lot of people we talk about these big brands. They go app builders would be like, wow, I want to build on Flow. I want to build next to the biggest brands in the world. How do I get started? And a couple of years ago, the answer was, uh, I don't know. It's kind of difficult,
You
and
start.
and even yeah, well, at a minimum, they're like, hey, you have to learn this new programming language called
Mhm.
Cadence, which is different than Solidity. And everyone who's already spent a long time learning Solidity was like,
Nope.
um, yeah, maybe I'll just stay where I'm at. I'm good.
Yeah. Like
And so
I'm not trying to put more work on myself. I'm trying to, make things easier.
yeah. Yeah, they had to weigh the calculus. Like, is it worth me learning this entire new programming language? I'm not entirely sure. What wallets do I use? What infrastructure I use? I don't know. Like, and so now that we have full EVM equivalence, it means no code changes. Like, if you have an app that you built on Solidity, you can literally just drag and drop, which is like you just change the RPC endpoint, and now you're running on Flow. some of the benefits of running on Flow EVM are that it's faster, transaction fees are a lot cheaper. Like it was funny when we set out to launch EVM equivalents, it was really just to kind of have that parity to act to be as a free port so that builders could come launch on Flow easily. We didn't realize that the Flow architecture, EVM runs really, really well on it. So
Mhm.
it's one of the most performant EVM environments on the planet, like by accident, just because the Flow architecture is really, really good. Um, so that's a great place to start for a lot of builders today. Now we still have our native programming language called Cadence, which was built for the scalability problem, for all these things. That's what the native Top Shot platform runs on. That's what all these incredible, incredible consumer experiences run on. EVM builders can get a taste of that. We have what's called an arc function where you can bring a little bit of that over. There's stuff like we have a verifiable random function, which gives you a random number, which on other networks you have to pay for. On Flow, it's free. So you can just like sprinkle a little bit of Cadence code in your EVM app and start getting a little bit of, we call it the EVM, we call it Flow EVM a little bit of the gateway drug, right? It's like you start
We're
building
like,
here and you go,
here,
wow. You're like, oh, it's really fast. It's really cheap. Maybe, and we say,
I'm
oh,
gonna
try a little bit of
convince you.
Cadence. Yeah, you try a little bit of Cadence and they go, oh man, I like, and then, so ideally, we think that, the best consumer apps in the world would be built on Flow. Maybe take out the consumer, the best apps in the world would be built on Flow. And so if you're a builder who has true ambition to build the best things in the world, we think there's no other place better to do it than Flow. And I would stand on business on that, as they say.
There you
So
go.
that's the pitch, I guess.
No, I love it. I think that's a great pitch. And where would they go? So if they're like, you know what, I'm curious, I'm building something, I do want to be, you know, in the best place where I could build right now. Who do I contact, or do I go on Discord? Is Twitter the best way? What have been some of those places where that you're fostering this community that you're mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to kind of join in on the community side, Discord, we have a Telegram. All these links are on flow.com. So ultimately, the punchline I'm getting to is like flow.com is the best place to get started. We've recently brought on some really, really awesome people to work on our developer docs who are like trained educators. Shout out Brian Doyle. Um, and yeah, they've done a great job. And so like people can go to flow.com and they can start building today. Like you said, if you want to kind of engage the community, Discord, Telegram, Twitter, definitely follow us on Twitter. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great place to find out what's happening on Flow just on a daily basis. So yeah, those are great places to start, but flow.com, easy to remember.
Amazing. No, and now you said flow.com. I'm like, every time through ETH Denver, I was like, oh yeah, everything is just flowing. And I'm like, I'm not doing this on purpose. And then I would say another sentence and I'm like, yeah, let's just go with the flow. I'm like, I need to stop. I was
It's
like,
kind of the it's kind of the
it's,
worst. I'll
it's
be in
so
calls and
complicated.
they'll be like, what's the user flow? And I'm over here like, flow mentioned. Now you can't
There
get
you
you can't get away from it.
You can. And then every single time I'm like, I was like, is this too cliche? I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I'm like, let's see. No, we're gonna record the podcast. I'm like, yeah, let's just go with the flow. I'm like, I need to stop now. But
No,
it's
don't stop.
a
Embrace
great.
it.
There you go. I have to embrace it, and that's it. And we're
Yes.
good. Um, Oh my God, I have so many questions in my head that I'm like, okay, which ones do I pick? Because I know that we're gonna be wrapping it up soon. But Matt, I think that what are some of those exciting projects or events that you're gonna be attending for the rest of the year? Places where if people want to meet IRL and really connect, they're like, oh, you know what, I couldn't go to ETH Denver, and now I would love to go to the next one. What are some of those next events? And probably my next question is going to go around what do they do in this castle, right? I know that we cover some of it, we covered the activities, but if I'm someone that wants to develop or that is developing an app, it's like, what are some of the benefits that I could possibly have by attending one of these?
Yeah. As far as the events go, we're still kind of hammering out our like big events like ETH Denver, but even, you asked about builders, like we've developed a really great relationship with ETH Global, who they just put on the best hackathons. I mean, it's like so good. We have there's some kind of OG developer relations guys on our team. And they always laugh about. They're like, when I was going to hackathons, we would get pizza and we would be sleeping on the floor. Like, and the ETH Global team, they're doing like geographically and culturally appropriate menus like sushi, like we went to one in Singapore, and it was in the MBS. Like we're in the premier hotel. Like these hackers are like living large. ETH Global does a fantastic job. So we'll be in Taipei, like, I don't know, in less than 2 weeks with ETH Global. I believe we'll be at Cannes near ETHCC, Prague with ETH Global, and then I think New Delhi with ETH Global as well. Maybe also New York. So we like ETH Global. um, and so hackers can meet our team there. We always have great bounties, people building really, really interesting stuff. I mean, I think you met some of the builders in Denver who are building on Flow. And so, yeah, so that's a great place to interface with us if you're a builder for the remainder of the year.
Love that. I think, all those places sound great, and also the perks of, like, there's I don't know, they're attending very nice places and not just having, a little pizza or sleeping on top of each other. I was like, you guys were very comfortable in Denver too. So that's an exciting I don't know, like, next steps to have. And Matt, what are, from some of this, events, and when you have seen the builders, if you had to describe, like, some of the community, because sometimes, I would hate for people to be discouraged of attending if they're like, oh, I've never been, I don't know anyone, should I reach out to someone before, you know, I think emphasizing on the importance of, like, it's an open door policy, please come, please that, like, walk us through what is expected if you're new to this community, how approachable the team is, and what kind of activities can they expect in these side events.
Yeah, I mean, so like for like our hacker houses, like the castle in East Denver, which was like so cool. Yeah, it's like kind of come as you are, and if you are a builder or if you're a fan of Flow or you're curious or you just want a place to co-work, like that's not terrible Wi-Fi. Like we try to just kind of cultivate a really cool environment for people who ever come to these conferences. And I don't know, we get a lot of feedback about the Flow team. People are always like, "Oh my gosh, you guys, your vibes are so good." Like, and I'm like thinking like we're just regular. I'm like, if you guys think we're the best, like I don't know. I'm actually kind of horrified to know what else is out there. And but so people, yeah, generally feel pretty welcome by our team, from our team. And so hacker houses, yeah, that's great. At ETH Global and things like that, we always have people at the table who are ready to help, and like, and they'll help you, with your PMF, your pitch, your tech, whatever. And people have really enjoyed interacting with the Flow team at those events as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we try to be as inclusive, as possible. I mean, that is like baked into our protocol layer. We have, I know I'm not going to get off on too much of a tangent, but like even things like MEV, right, which is a big topic of conversation right now. Like Flow doesn't have MEV because the builders thoughtfully considered that they didn't want people stealing other people's money at the protocol level. Like, and so like that inclusivity, that attitude, that kind of like openness is like at the core of even our tech. And I think that's how we try to approach just how we interact with people in the ecosystem as well. So hopefully that's helpful. Does that answer that question?
Absolutely, I think it does. And at the end of the day, there's not like one specific answer for a question so broad like that. But I think it's just an invitation, right, for people to feel that it's not too late. Sometimes also when we are going, and speaking of, like, a blockchain that has been around for so long, that you guys have built so many things, it could feel intimidating. And like I said, I was like, I also want to think not only of the big brands, amazing, come one, come all. But I would like for someone that is building really cool things to feel encouraged to say, hey, let me knock on the door, right? Let me find out a little bit more. Let me see how could I be part of this big opportunity, but not feel intimidating that, it might be too late, or I don't know anyone, or
No,
I'm not connected with
no,
anyone. And
no.
it's not about this. This is more about, if you need a blockchain that is the best in the game, that is doing all these things, that has all the solutions, and you're going to have all this support, that people feel comfortable. And if it could be in person, even more so, right? Like, even more so of, like, hey, take advantage of these hackathons. To me, some of the opportunities for hackathons, it's incredible. Like, the more that I find out about it, some of these prices, and then the work that is being done. I think that would be one of my last questions. Do you mind sharing a little bit, like a little glimpse of, some of the, maybe one of the of the winners. It doesn't have to be top one, two,
Yeah.
or whatever that like maybe got your attention. You're like, oh, how cool what they were able to build. And some of the prices, I feel like some people don't know. Hey, you know what? Like, put your brains together, and you want to build cool things. Like, there's actually, a lot of resources out there and really good prices to get you going.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Yeah, we try to be really competitive with our pricing because we want, to attract people who are building the best stuff. And so I know a lot of builders who I saw at multiple ETH Global events, who, if they're really talented, they can kind of travel around the world and kind of, subsidize some of their cost of living the digital nomad lifestyle through like building really cool stuff. And I think about, you mentioned kind of, yeah, the little guy and how do you get started and how it can feel intimidating. And that's the funny part is like I spend the majority of my time talking to kind of newer builders, up and coming builders on the ecosystem as opposed to these big brands. Like, I think about, teams like Kitty Punch, More Markets, Pump.Flow, like, and Pump.Flow is a great example. We actually met them at a hackathon in Singapore at ETH Global. And they came up to us and they're like, hey, we want to build on Flow. We noticed you guys don't have a meme coin launchpad. We want to build that for you. So they started building. They ended up winning a prize there. They were on mainnet like a couple of weeks after, like already cooking, generating fees. And then we saw them in another ETH Global hackathon after that. And they were like working with other hackers to add additional features. Like, and we just flew them out to Denver to be scholars. And so like they've kind of grown and become like an integral part of our community just from starting as a hackathon builder. And like, I love that team. They're so much fun. They're hilarious
Right.
guys from Turkey. But yeah, it's just like, and they just started building stuff and they built at a hackathon. And now they're have a real working app and generating some success from that, which is really awesome.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that story because I think this is yet again where both of our worlds meet, and I'm like, this is where you truly feel that this is a global community, right? This is a global
Hmm.
community. It's a lot of opportunities for anyone, regardless of if you're in Turkey, if you're in the US, if you are in Singapore, that because of this global community, I don't know, you could subsidize traveling the world and building really cool things and then having the support and being with like-minded people. So I'm just really excited to see what comes next. I'm really excited for more builders to see what you guys have been doing and see how can they add value and also take on some of these opportunities and to bridge that gap between like the whole blockchain technology but then real use cases that are continuing to find solutions to so many other problems that we're like, okay, this could be solved with blockchain. And one of the big brands that you mentioned now, like Ticketmasters, I could come up with a lot of problems that they were having and they're probably still having right now. But if they're dipping their toes and they're utilizing this, hopefully it could trigger down to so many other things that could be solved with blockchain on that end. But
100%.
I don't know.
100%.
Before we wrap it up, I want to make sure that um, I give it back to you to have any closing thoughts, anything that we might have missed or that you want to share.
Well, I guess now that we're kind of talking about builders in our ecosystem, like, and we talk about these big brands and what is the relationship between I'm just getting started building on Flow and there's these kind of big monolithic brands. Like, think about, there's a builder in our ecosystem, his name's CJ, who has an app called AI Sports Pro. And the cool thing that he's done is he's used the open on-chain data for NBA Top Shot to build his app. Now you can, like, NBA Top Shot has its own kind of daily fantasy style game called Fast Break, and so now he's building features that take the winning or loss data and build on top of that. So you can log into his app with your Dapper wallet or your account linked wallet, and then you can kind of like add some extra what he calls juice on top of that. On top of that, so he's able to go and say, "Hey, Top Shot users, I've got an app that you can use. Like, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to buy new stuff. Just come to my app, use the digital assets you already have, and I'm going to give you extra utility on top of that." And so, like, that kind of composability is something that we all talk about. We all talk about like permissionless, composable, interoperable, but we don't see a lot of it because everyone's too focused in their lane trying to build their own app. But it's like, no, this is a huge like user acquisition unlock. Like, you can build on top of the world's biggest brands, compose on top of them. Top Shot's happy you're doing it. You're giving more utility to their NFTs. You're getting more, more users. It's like kind of a win-win that doesn't exist in Web 2, you know?
It doesn't, and I feel like for many people, even you mentioning what he's working on is gonna open their eyes and their thoughts of like, "Ooh, I could also do this," or "What can I
Yeah.
do with these other ones?" I'm like, "I didn't know you could do this." So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see
Yeah,
what
and you
comes
get
next.
you get you get vibe coding now. I'm like, yeah, you're like, oh, I've had this idea about this sports app, and now these are NBA Top Shot moments. Maybe I'll just like vibe code some weird app. Like go for it.
And have
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah, and have fun. And let's see. Also, I think that um, this is where you could test it and then you see how people receive it and and that's it. And I was like, and well, you might be surprised, you probably have been wanting to build something and now you have this opportunity. So excited to see what comes next. I thank you for
Yeah.
your time. I'm excited for everything else that is yet to come. I love that we got to have this chat and really recap not only ETHDenver but the whole journey and to encourage people. I think at the end of the day, encourage more people to build on flow, to pay attention, to seek out help when you need it, and also to seek out some opportunities because the opportunities are there. And I think that many times, perhaps you have a good idea, but you don't have the right team to connect with other builders. There could be a set of skills that you might have that are very particular, but guess what? Maybe someone else out there is probably waiting for you to be like that co-founder and be able to build something exciting. So yeah, so thank you
Exactly.
so much.
Yeah, no, thank you, Laura. This has been a super fun conversation, and it was great to once again, yeah, meet you in Denver, and looking forward to chatting some more. So appreciate you.
Absolutely. I hope that I get to join many other events and be part of the team as an ally, as a formal friend and colleague. So I don't know. I'm just excited to continue to build in the Web3 space and see where this whole thing takes us. I think this is the fun part about innovation. That at the end of the day, we're like, we know what we're doing today. 3 months later, something else is new, something else is happening. We need to adapt, we need to grow, but continuing to being excited about learning and enjoying the process and collaboration. So, yeah,
100%. And yeah, I know we forget it, but we're still early. I know it's cliche, but we
no,
truly are.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Matt. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Laura.
Bye.